Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. At this time, we ask that you please find your tables. We're nearing the beginning of our 14th annual Hometown Heroes Awards ceremony. Thanks so much for being here. All right, so if everyone has been able to find their seat now, we're going to start our program. I want to start off by welcoming the mayor of the city of Carson, Mayor Albert Robles.
Good afternoon, everyone. And it's my great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the great city of Carson, California. I'm looking down here and I didn't notice, I was sitting right behind him. I didn't notice one of the founding fathers of the city. And as Carson is celebrating its 50th anniversary since incorporating as a city this year, I want to make sure to recognize him for all his hard work. One of the founding council members, one of the first mayors, and he and I, to kick off the city's 50th anniversary, rode in the float in the Rose Parade this year. So Gil Smith, the Honorable Gil Smith. And his lovely wife, Shirley, thank you for being here. I don't see, now that I've started to introduce people, I feel I need to introduce my other colleagues on the city council. I don't see them here, but in their absence, let me acknowledge them also. Our Mayor Pro Tem, Jawan Hilton, Councilwoman Lula Davis Holmes, Councilmember Cedric Hicks, and Councilmember Elito M. Santorina, who is actually a big supporter and champion of the Red Cross. I want to welcome all of you to the 14th Annual America Red Cross Hometown Heroes Awards ceremony, honoring ordinary people in our community for their extraordinary acts of bravery in using their Red Cross skills to help someone else in need, and most often, usually a stranger. So let's give them, all the recipients this year, a round of applause. Thank you. Special acknowledgement, I can't help it. He is an employee, one of our proud examples, Carson employee, Oscar. So I called him out. Thank you, Oscar, for being a hero. So I now ask you to please stand for the presentation of the colors by the Los Angeles County Fire Department Honor Guard. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the greatest country on earth. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all of our impressive guests at the largest Hometown Heroes, number 14, and the largest Hometown Heroes luncheon ever. Congratulations to you, congratulations, Margaret, congratulations to Long Beach Board. What an impressive event. And what an important event. I know those of you who've been here before know that they'll know to bring your tissues with you, because some of the stories you're going to hear Tiffany, I hope you brought your tissues. I warned you just a little while ago. You're gonna be crying at some of these stories of bravery. The Red Cross has 5 lines of service, 5 ways we work as humanitarians to make lives safer, to help people in their hour of need. Preparedness, health, and safety, we teach swimming, CPR, first aid, even babysitting. We do disaster response and make communities more resilient. We work with our veterans and active duty military in our service to armed forces and veterans programs. And we work internationally in countries less fortunate, either with victims of disaster or war, in helping reunite families and our measles campaign. And of course, we are the nation's largest supplier of blood. 42% of the nation's blood supply. And if you've ever been rushed to the emergency room or had a family member who has, you've probably relied at some point on that blood supply. And Red Cross has been there for you and your family. We couldn't do any of this work without our amazing partners. And it's my honor today to recognize a truly special partner for the Los Angeles Red Cross and nationally for the American Red Cross. The Endeavor Foundation has nationally given to the Red Cross in its existence $2.2 million. Recently, after the hurricane in Texas, they made a generous $200,000 donation. But before that donation, right here in Southern California, in part because of their amazing board member on the Long Beach board, Olga, who's right there, Olga Chavez. Thank you, Olga, and your advocacy. They led the effort to donate disaster action team vehicles, 2 in Washington State, 1 in San Antonio, and 1 based out of Long Beach, but focused on Compton and East LA and our other vulnerable communities in the 49 communities served by the Long Beach chapter. That was an extremely generous donation, and we're so grateful. But not to be beat, their generosity went even further this year. And this is why I'm presenting the award today as we talk about the importance of Red Cross's biomedical services and the life-saving work that your giving blood does. Because one of our biggest challenges in giving blood is that people find it hard to drive to the locations where we do blood drives. So Red Cross has a number of blood mobiles. And where we have blood mobiles, we can drive those blood mobiles to where people want to give blood, making it easier for you to be generous in giving life-saving blood and platelets. Unfortunately, if you've ever been in one of our blood mobiles, they tend to be on the older side. I think the average age is about 25 years old. And so we have a real need to replace our fleet of blood mobiles. And this is where the Endeavor Foundation came in this year. Not just 1, but 2 in Salt Lake City and another based out of Long Beach serving Southern California. They've generously agreed to donate 2 blood mobiles to the American Red Cross. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. We are so grateful. And here to tell you more about that is Tiffany Rao, who's the Endeavor's Director of Government and Public Affairs here in their Southern California operations. I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany, who's appearing on the side of the stage.
Thank you, Jarrett. I'll save the red carpet for today's True Heroes. I attended this lunch last year, and it really, really touched my heart. So I really look forward to hearing the stories, and congratulations to the heroes. I want to thank the Mayor Robles, for hosting us here in his city today. And just to give you just a feel for why we're up here today, just to quote our CEO of Endeavor, Greg Goff, he says that it's important to run a great company, but it's equally important to give back and help others. And so in that regard, the Endeavor Foundation, when it was established in 2015, we asked our employees where they thought we should prioritize our areas of giving. And at the top of the list for them was public safety. because safety is a core value for all of us at Endeavor. And so it is a kind of a perfect nexus, a perfect partnership for us to support the Red Cross and all of their endeavors in helping victims and helping first responders and the public prepare for and respond to emergencies. And so we, as Jarrett mentioned, are supporting a new bloodmobile here for Southern California. Also, another very close nexus for us is the Southern California Blood Services region for the Red Cross serves 110 hospitals from Ventura, LA to San Diego to the Inland Empire, and that's exactly our operating footprint here in Southern California. So we're very, very pleased to be supporting and providing additional bloodmobiles. That actually, I just wanted to read a little statistic about it, that given that 1 unit of blood can benefit up to 3 people, each bloodmobile has the ability to save 50,000 lives per year. That is remarkable. That is outstanding. So today, before we get to the check presentation, I want to invite a person that's integral to making this happen today, Brian Sullivan. He's our Vice President of Corporate Affairs and the President of the Board of the Endeavor Foundation. So I'm going to ask Brian to join me on stage because today we'll be giving a $400,000 grant for the mobile unit. I'm going to let Brian explain a little more.
Thank you very much.
I'll be brief. They said a lot already, a lot of great things about Endeavor. So this year we celebrate 4 years of our foundation. And in those 4 years, we've developed a very strong relationship with the Red Cross, not just here, but throughout the country where we operate. When it comes to public safety, we think in a lot of ways, there's no better organization for us to support. We have invested, and I use that word specifically, invested over $2.2 million in the Red Cross in those 4 years. And today, I believe this is the 11th and 12th vehicle that Endeavor has supported as part of the Red Cross. So we're very proud to be here and to help support the Red Cross, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's do this. Here we go. Thank you so much. This is big. You think they'll take this at Citibank? I don't know. I'm going to just... Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Olga. We're so grateful for your generosity. And for you all to lend Olga to us on the Long Beach chapter board does amazing work, one of our very best. The new chair of the Philanthropy Committee, I believe. Thank you. I want to now, on the theme of blood, we have 2 blood heroes that we'd like to recognize today. And Tiffany mentioned that statistic, how much blood can save a life. Each blood donation and the products that are in a pint of blood has the potential to save up to 3 lives. This is an extraordinary contribution that everyday Americans, everyday Californians, everyday residents of anywhere in the Long Beach chapter area or anywhere in Los Angeles, any of us can hopefully provide. There are different things that people do. I'm going to tell you about our first awardee because she's done them all. Diane Halal. Diana. No, it's Diane. Diane, where are you? I saw you over here earlier. I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, can you stand for like a second while I recognize you, all right? And then you're going to want to applaud her, but hold the applause. Like many of you, Diane has been a Red Cross blood donor for a long time. She first gave blood in 1986. She began giving as often as she can after several years, after about 15 years of loyal giving and over 6 gallons of blood that she gave, in 2001, she heard about platelet donations. Perhaps you haven't heard about platelet donations. Well, maybe you can catch Diane afterwards and she can tell you just how it works. It's a little bit of a longer commitment. You sit down for 2 hours, you can read a book, you can go to sleep, you can watch television. We just got a partnership with Netflix so you can watch movies while you give platelets, and they screen your blood and take out the platelets. And amazingly, those platelets save lives in different ways for folks who need platelets and not red blood cells. So in 2001, Diane began doing this. She has given over 460 units. So she sits 460 times on one of those seats. Now you can get Netflix, Diane, so keep coming. How many lives has she saved? She's an extraordinary example to the generosity of an everyday Angelino who's given back to others by being so generous. And I wanted to recognize her today. Nurses, please come over to her and she's gonna present you your certificate. Stay right there, Diane, right behind you. And Fetty, can we get a picture of Diane as we do that? And while we get the picture of Diane, I'm gonna ask you hold your applause because we've got one more blood hero, and that's Matthew Martinez. Matthew, will you please stand? I don't know where Matthew is sitting. I saw him, there he is. Matthew, hold the applause. Now, if you're a volunteer in the Long Beach chapter, you probably know Matthew. He's a high school student and incoming president of the Long Beach Youth Club. This past year, he organized 7 blood drives. That's 7, 4 at his high school, McBride High School, and 3 in his neighborhood through the Lakewood Garden Civic Association. He has recruited in the last year 300 people to give blood to the American Red Cross at our blood drives. He has collected over 289 donations, impacting 867 lives. He has a bright future as a Red Crosser, and I believe he's now you are in pursuit of your Eagle Scout. I think you've gone a long way towards your service project, towards becoming an Eagle Scout. So for that, Matthew, and for so much more in leading the youth club here in Long Beach, we are grateful for your work with the Long Beach chapter and to your contributions to the entire American Red Cross. Nurses, please present him with his certificate. And now let's applaud both of our heroes, Diane and Matthew. Now, lunch is about to be served, and as it is served, I just wanted to invite you to watch this short video, which depicts those 5 lines of service I was talking about: preparedness, health, and safety, disaster response, service to armed forces and veterans, international services, and our blood and biomedical services. Thank you for being here, and let's get on with the show.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your lunch in this beautiful new venue for our event. I want to thank the City of Carson for hosting us today. Thank you, City of Carson, thank you. My name is Paul Conrad. I'm the chairman of the board of directors for the American Red Cross, serving Greater Long Beach, Rio Hondo, and South Bay. It is my honor today to welcome you to our 14th Hometown Heroes event. I want to thank you for coming today, and I want to thank you for supporting our event, for supporting our chapter, and for supporting the American Red Cross. I'd also like to thank those people here today who make this event possible. So first, I'd like to start with the board of directors for the Long Beach chapter. If you all could stand or wave for us. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize any Red Cross volunteers that are here today helping work the event and help us scope. Please, if you're a Red Cross volunteer, please stand and wave. Thank you. We couldn't do this event without the help of Red Cross staff. So if you're a Red Cross staff member supporting this event for us, please stand and say hi. Thank you to those too. Thank you very much. And last but not least, I want to specifically thank our Hometown Heroes Committee and its chairman, Scott Dauscher. They work all year long putting this event on. So we picked this date, we changed it. We used to be in March, we picked the date of May 10th, and it happens this week to fall in the same week as World Red Cross and Red Crescent Day, which is a celebration of the principles of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent. World Red Cross Day is held on May 8th, which is the anniversary of the birth of Henry Dunant, who formed the Red Cross movement in Geneva, Switzerland. The International Committee of the Red Cross was created 155 years ago in 1863 in Geneva. It was followed by the creation of the American Red Cross by Clara Barton in this country in 1881, 137 years ago. The Red Cross came to the Los Angeles area just over 100 years ago, to Los Angeles in 1916 and to Long Beach in 1917. So, in all likelihood, we were here before you were born. Today, the American Red Cross serves its community through the 5 lines of service that Jarrett Barrios spoke about when he was up here and that you saw illustrated on the film that we just saw. One of those services is disaster relief. And as everybody knows from the news and from TV, it's been a busy year for disaster relief in the United States, with hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, and here in California with the major wildfires we had up in Napa and Santa Rosa, and then the Thomas Fire down our way in Ventura and Santa Barbara. What you don't see in the news is the work of the local disaster action teams. Disaster action teams are teams of volunteers from our chapter and from other chapters around the Long Beach area who deploy to help individuals and families deal with disasters, very commonly home fires or house fires. These teams are deploying almost every day, and very often in the middle of the night. They're called out typically by a fire department who's responded to a fire, and they go and they meet with the victims of that disaster who have often lost their home and lost all their possessions. Our teams help those, provide comfort and support to those people, and then provide them with help in getting lodging and necessities, and then do what we call casework, following up with them in the weeks after that to get them back on their feet and help them recover from that disaster. It's a very, very important role for the American Red Cross and for our chapter and for the Los Angeles region. One of our initiatives this year, and if you're a sponsor, you were asked about this, and I want to thank everybody who donated to our DAT fleet campaign. We are raising $100,000 to acquire 2 more DAT vehicles to support DAT operations in our most vulnerable communities in our chapter service area. So I want to thank everybody who donated to that campaign. Thank you very much. So at this time, I would like to introduce to you Margaret Arbini Madonna. She is the executive director of our chapter and a person critical to the success of this event and the success of our chapter as a whole.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Welcome again to our 14th annual Hometown Heroes, and welcome to the city of Carson. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens all year long with the amazing finding of the heroes. And we hope that if you like what you see here today, that you will think about in your life the kinds of people that you know that could qualify as heroes. We also couldn't have this happen without our sponsors. And Paul and I would like to now thank you very much, our sponsors individually. Our hero sponsors for this event were Big Five and Endeavor Corporation.
And our response sponsor is Toyota Auto Body Corporation.
Our prevention sponsors are the law firm of AALRR from Scott and his friends, Scott Dauscher. Board member Stephen O'Kane at AES Alamitos. Board Member Paul Conrad from Bragg Companies, Cora Events, who are our hosts and catering today, the City of Carson, Total Western Incorporated, and Valero Wilmington Refinery.
Our preparedness level sponsors include Acrisure Busby Stone Risk Management, California Resources Corporation, Forest Lawn, who provided the centerpieces on each of your tables, Ineos, JHS CPAs, thank you, Tom, Mitsubishi Cement, NRG, the Port of Long Beach, Brand Safeway Corporation, LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn, UPS, and the Water Replenishment District of Southern California. Let's give a big hand of applause for all our sponsors.
And now it is my very great honor to introduce to you Laura Kaplan Nieto. Laura is a professionally trained journalist who has been an anchor person in San Diego and on-air personality. But more importantly, to those of us who have been doing Heroes for the past 14 years, she is the daughter of the Voice of God, which is our wonderful Matt Kaplan. Matt loves this event. He was with me behind the screen when we used to do reverse screen projection. And now he said the only thing that would prevent him from coming to Heroes is if he would be sent to Mars. So he is actually in Washington, D.C., leading a consortium on, guess what? Getting people to Mars. So he sent, we kind of think maybe not just the next best thing, but a really maybe better thing. So please welcome Laura Nieto Kaplan. Laura Kaplan Nieto, sorry.
Thank you, Margaret, so much. Definitely not a better thing than my dad, but I'm really, really honored to be here today, so thank you. Thank you to all of the organizers of this amazing event for allowing me to step in. To say that I'm honored would be a very serious understatement. It's not often that the stories I tell bear this much weight and value and significance. In preparing for today, I spent a lot of time letting your stories sink in. And I can tell you that I have truly never been more humbled or inspired. In this room, there is an incredible greatness and grace. So again, thank you very much for having me here today. This just so happens to be National Nurses Week. And in case you haven't noticed them already, the ladies wearing the vintage Red Cross uniforms from World War II in the 1950s and 60s are our red carpet escorts. Perhaps they brought you to your table. And 8 of our Red Cross nurse volunteers. So I just want to thank them. They are Debbie Sutton, Jane Dean, Karen Wells, Joni Levis, Anna Matthew, Agnes De Leon, Jeanette Iturino, and Kathy Warren. So thank you very much to all of them. This event is now in its 14th year, and many of you here today are veterans. There are also a good number of you who are new to Hometown Heroes. So how many of you are here for your first time? I'm one of them. Wow, that's awesome. So you are all about to learn that our heroes are all very different people with diverse personalities and ages and beliefs and backgrounds and abilities. They do all share one big uniting characteristic. Something inside pulled them toward another human in need. In many cases, that other person was a stranger. You will hear several times today that these heroes we're here to honor today don't think that they have done anything heroic. They simply did what anyone else would have done. Regardless, I think that we can all agree that these wonderful human beings took extraordinary and decisive action, and as a result, many, many lives were saved this past year. So, without further ado, let's please begin acknowledging their stories. Joe Flay Haven. Long Beach firefighter Andy Dimitropoulos and his wife Lindsay, an emergency room nurse at Long Beach Memorial, are both very familiar with the phrase, "every second counts." But it took on new meaning last year, the afternoon of June 8th. The family had invited a small group of classmates and parents over for a pool party to celebrate their son Dylan's last day of school. At some point, amid the festivities, their 2.5-year-old daughter, Malia, wandered back into the gated area of the pool area, without her floaties on. It was only a few moments before one of the other mothers spotted Malia floating face down in the spa. Lindsay recalls that she went one way around the pool, and their family friend, Joe Flay Haven, a firefighter and a paramedic, went the other way. Malia was blue, not breathing, and she had no pulse. Lindsay pulled Malia out of the spa and handed her to Joe, who immediately began administering CPR, which he continued for a full 2 minutes. And she notes that as an ER nurse, she's taken care of countless children, but that because this was her own child, any knowledge went completely out the door. Lindsay was composed enough to feel Malia's pulse return, so Joe switched to mouth-to-mouth resuscitation just as sirens started nearing the house. The Long Beach Fire Department, Rescue Unit 17, and Fire Unit 22. Meanwhile, all this time, Andy was at work at Fire Station 7, and that's where he was when his captain told him that his daughter had been in a drowning accident and that they needed to leave for the hospital immediately. But because of that immediate response, it was in the ambulance that Malia started to regain consciousness. In the Memorial Hospital emergency room, she began to cry for her mommy and daddy. Thanks to the heroic and decisive actions of off-duty Glendale firefighter and paramedic Joe Flay Haven, this now 3.5-year-old is here hanging the Hometown Hero Medal on her personal superhero. And escorting Malia here today are her grateful parents, Andy and Lindsay. So please let's give a warm round of applause to Joe Flay Haven. I should note Malia stayed in the hospital for 3 days, but as you can see, she has made a full recovery. Oscar Rodriguez. Our next hero is from the city of Carson, and he's being escorted by Mr. Gil Smith. As a founding father of the city of Carson, Mr. Smith served on the city council for 13 years, including 2 years as mayor. He is currently honorary chair of Carson's 50th anniversary celebration and has served many organizations, including the American Red Cross Greater Los Angeles Board of Directors. Last year, on St. Patrick's Day, Carson Park was busy with families, playing soccer, picnicking, flying kites. And about 5 p.m., Oscar Rodriguez, a Parks and Rec employee, arrived at work. And he was headed outside when a girl came running in looking for him. She said that her father, Victor Perez, had tripped and fallen while coaching his soccer team. Oscar ran across the park toward a group of anxious children and screaming adults. He remembers having a premonition that Victor was in serious trouble. And in fact, by the time that he ran up to the group, Victor was not breathing and turning purple. Another person was performing CPR, but was quickly tiring. Oscar had a terrible vision of Victor dying there in front of his kids and his young team, and he knew that he could not let that happen. Grabbing the breathing shield provided during Red Cross CPR training, Oscar quickly put the shield on Victor and took over the CPR and rescue breaths. He worked and worked, even while terrified that he might be doing it wrong or that it just wouldn't work. But he kept going, and before too long, Victor's color returned. The police and paramedics arrived, took over, and transported Victor to the hospital. The police later returned to tell Oscar that the paramedics said that his actions had undoubtedly saved Victor's life. Victor Perez made a full recovery and is now back to being a father and a coach. And he is here today to place the medal on his hero, Oscar. Please join me in congratulating Oscar Rodriguez. It is worth noting, something that makes this story even more incredible. Victor's daughter ran to Oscar for help because she knew him as the man who had saved her life a few months earlier when he performed abdominal thrusts after she choked on a potato chip. Pretty amazing. So another round of applause, please. Dante Powell. Just after midnight on January 13th of last year, Dante Powell was leaving the AM/PM on the corner of Bellflower and Atherton when he saw a speeding car flash by and heard the horrific sound of vehicles crashing. A Long Beach Police Department truck hit by the speeding car went airborne. Dante could see the vehicles just over the gas pumps between him and the crash, and without hesitation, he ran over to help. The truck had been T-boned by a speeding Mercedes and was now lying on its side. The Mercedes engine compartment was in flames, and inside was one unconscious man. In a split-second decision, Dante headed for the fiery Mercedes first. As he approached, two other men stopped to help, and together they broke the back window and pulled the limp, unconscious driver from the burning vehicle to safety. A Cal State Long Beach police officer arrived from the campus nearby, and Dante shouted at him to grab his fire extinguisher to douse the growing flames. Dante and the two other civilians then turned their attention to the badly injured police department employee still trapped inside the upturned truck. Thinking quickly, Dante grabbed a piece of debris and broke out the truck's windshield, severely lacerating his right arm and wrist. The Long Beach Fire Department arrived, and together with the firefighters and the paramedics, Dante assisted in pulling the driver to safety. The two victims were immediately transported to area trauma hospitals. Paramedics then treated Dante's injuries with 8 stitches at the scene. One firefighter, impressed with his actions, commented that most people don't respond like that. They get their cell phones out and they call for help. So please help me in congratulating and thanking Dante Powell here. And I also want to note that Dante received first aid and CPR training from the Red Cross as a girls softball coach for Bellflower High School, and he's now coaching baseball at Signal Hill. So thanks again to him. Tori Mulitawa Opele, Pat Frome, and Hank Cochran. On January 25th, of 2017, Golden West College student Javier Venegas collapsed during track practice on the athletic field. Coach Hank Cochran, who was at the field working with another group of athletes, ran over and quickly assessed that Javier had no pulse and was not breathing. Shouting for someone to call 911, Coach Cochran started chest compressions. Coach Pat Frome and his assistant, Cal State Long Beach athletic training intern Toli Mulitawa Opele, were both in Frome's office when they heard the cry for help. The two sprang into action, grabbing the automatic external defibrillator and an emergency pack, and they raced to the scene. Coach Frome says that after checking Javier's vitals, he confirmed he wasn't breathing and did not have a pulse. At that point, he took over chest compressions and instructed Tori to start rescue breathing. When this failed to revive Javier, they attached the AED and delivered one shock. No response. A second shock was administered, and that time it worked. Javier took in a gasp of air, and his heartbeat returned. At this point, the EMT arrived to transport the athlete to the emergency room, where he was put into a medically induced coma. But Javier Venegas is now fully recovered and here to hang the medal on his heroes today. So please join me in a round of applause for Toli Mulitawa Opele, Pat Frome, and Hank Cochran. It was later determined that Javier had a heart arrhythmia. His mother, Valerie, says that each cardiologist who saw him at 3 different hospitals said that Javier was alive today because these individuals on the stage took action. And luckily, the right people were at the right place at the right time. She says that this could have been a very different story. So again, please join me in thanking them. Keith Mora, and Greg Dahlmeyer. On Monday morning of August 15th, two off-duty LA County firefighters, Specialist Greg Dahlmeyer and Captain Keith Mora, were on their way to work. They were unaware as they drove in that morning that the California Highway Patrol had been receiving many frantic 911 calls, warning of a reckless driver in a Chevy Tahoe who was speeding and swerving erratically north on the 405 near Seal Beach. It was inevitable that the driver, impaired by alcohol and illegal drugs, would be the cause of an atrocious multi-vehicle collision. And sure enough, the Tahoe struck a Tesla with such force that it trapped the driver and passengers inside the badly damaged car. Two young sisters were unconscious in the back seat. The driver, their father, was unable to move because of his own serious injuries. When they came upon the scene of the crash, Greg and Keith immediately assessed the situation of the people trapped in the vehicle and assisted CHP officers in the difficult task of freeing them from the tangled wreckage. Both girls were unresponsive, and neither one of them was breathing. Captain Mora provided aid to one of the victims, while Specialist Dahlmeyer reestablished the airway of the other. For their selfless actions and willingness to place themselves in danger to deliver life-saving care, we award Captain Keith Mora and firefighter specialist Greg Dahlmeyer with the Hometown Heroes Medal. Please join me in a round of applause for Keith and Greg. And it is important to note, the family in that car has made a dramatic recovery from their life-threatening injuries. They are alive today due to the swift actions of these brave officers. The Red Cross movement was born on the battlefield from a need to support soldiers wounded in combat. Clara Barton, the founder of the Red Cross, was aiding and assisting Civil War soldiers. Our mission has grown to include families and veterans. And on that, we want to welcome our veteran hero, Marine Corps Captain Kim Winn. Kim's family emigrated to the U.S. in the 1980s from Vietnam before she was born. She grew up in LA, the youngest of three sisters who were not permitted to go outside unless their parents were home. They wanted their children to have a better life, and education was the key. Kim's passion was running, and she was very fast. So she joined the cross-country team. While attending UCLA, she joined the ROTC as a Navy shipman because she wanted to travel and loved the water. She later moved to the Marine Corps and recalls that she could keep up with the boys and even beat most of them. During officer candidate school at Quantico, she was frequently caught breaking bearing for smiling and laughing. A Marine obviously has to keep a pretty stern face. In basic school for commissioned platoon officers, she wore packs of supplies on her back. She weighed 100 pounds, and the packs she carried weighed 70. Kim was deployed to Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom as Squadron Assistant Operations Officer in Helicopter Landing Zone Maintenance, working to protect U.S. helicopters from brownout. Her second deployment was to Kuwait, where she was the Logistics Operations Officer, part of the Crisis Response Force. It goes without saying that women Marines are the minority, and she often felt the need to prove herself before she could be trusted and accepted. After her deployment, Kim was transferred to Parris Island. She was a Marine for 10 years, and it was scary and lonely transitioning out of the service. She says, "The Marine Corps changed my life for the better. You are always part of a family. All that I learned during my time with the Marines made me who I am today. Once a Marine, always a Marine." Kim has received 10 U.S. Marine Corps medals and service awards during the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal twice, National Defense Service Medals, and the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. Please join me in a huge round of applause for Kim Winn. Because of a knee injury and subsequent surgery a few years ago, Kim was inspired to help others going through similar circumstances. She agrees with her parents that education is the key, and she is currently now enrolled in college, planning to attend medical school. So again, one more round of applause for her. Cori Allison. On May 21st of last year, Cori Allison, a nurse, was staying at a local hotel, visiting her Army reservist husband who is training in Long Beach. She was about to check out and leave, but she let her 3 children talk her into a little more pool time. It turned out to be a life-saving decision. They were at the indoor pool for about 45 minutes, where there was also another woman with a 7-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. She was keeping her small daughter close as her son, Kenru, was playing in the pool. Cori was just about to take off when the other mom started screaming for Kenru, who had gone face down in the water. Cori picked the boy up out of the pool and saw water streaming from his eyes and his nose. As a nurse, she could tell that his lungs were completely full, so she shouted to her daughter to call 911 and began CPR rescue breaths. His mother was hysterical, screaming frantically. A tall man arrived and held the boy's hand as more water came out of his eyes and nose. Soon, dozens of people gathered around as Cori kept going. She'd done CPR before, but never on someone that far gone. And after 3 or 4 minutes, she began to think, this is not going to work. As she gave him yet another breath, she started to say, come back, please come back. Suddenly, she finally felt her breath enter his lungs and saw light return to his eyes. His hand came up and touched her face, and she thought to herself, this was a divine intervention. It was at this point that the paramedics arrived and quickly transported Kenru to a local hospital. One of them said to Cori, do you know what you just did? And then he asked her children, can you believe that your mom is a hero? Hanging the medal on Cori Allison today is Kenru Maliksi, escorted by his mom, Ramakina Maliksi. Please join me in a huge round of applause for Cori Allison. Our hero today, Cori, has experienced the support of the Red Cross before. Back in 2002, she lost everything in a house fire, but she says that by the grace of God, her son and she were saved. She says that the Red Cross rescued them then, and she has a huge place in her heart for all that they do. She's especially excited for her daughter to see and be a part of this experience today. So please, another round of applause. Scott Moore, Hector Ramos, Rob Gore, and Lori Hutton. On Labor Day weekend of last year, the Long Beach Kiwanis Club was having its annual fundraising event at a member's home. As Scott Moore was getting ready to serve a volleyball, he stepped back and stumbled over his partner, Carrie Brofman. Carrie was face down on the ground, clutching his shoulder. Scott asked him, "Are you okay?" And there was no response. Scott rolled Carrie over, found no pulse, and saw that he was turning blue. He immediately yelled for someone to call 911. Lori Hutton and a fellow nurse were nearby and quickly began assessing Carrie. Hector Ramos also ran up and instantly began CPR compressions. Lori continued to assess the situation while the other nurse began giving rescue breaths. As Hector began to tire, Robert Gore relieved him and continued the compressions. They continued with team CPR, and after what seemed like an eternity, paramedics arrived. Carrie required shocks from an AED and regained consciousness. In fact, as the paramedics were wheeling him towards the ambulance, he gave everyone a thumbs up, signing that he was okay. And he was, thanks to the quick action taken by everyone involved. Rob Gore is here representing his fellow heroes today, and hanging the medal on him is a very grateful Carrie Brofman. So please, a round of applause for him. This story is a perfect example of why CPR is so effective. These heroes that we're hearing about today, they knew the ABCs of CPR. You check, call, care. Check to assess the situation, call for help, care by beginning compressions and rescue breaths. They kept going until the paramedics arrived, and if they had not, if any of our heroes had not, these stories would have ended very differently. Carlton McMiller and Jeremy Garcia. On the morning of May 15th of last year, the staff at Ironwood Golf Course in Cerritos received a phone call from a golfer on the course telling them to call 911 and have someone deliver a defibrillator to the 6th hole. When they arrived, they found employee Jeremy Garcia already administering CPR compressions on the unconscious golfer, Mr. Logan Ruru. Jeremy had been driving his tractor mower when he saw several people looking down at Mr. Ruru. After calling the sheriff's department to tell them where to go on the course, he began CPR. Another golfer, Carlton McMiller, saw the commotion and he rushed over too. He took over performing CPR while Jeremy prepared the AED. Mr. McMiller is a retired fireman and a veteran of Vietnam. Anyone who's had to do this before, they know that CPR is incredibly difficult and very physical. Mac tore off Mr. Ruru's shirt to allow use of the AED. They applied several shocks, but they were unable to revive him. But they continued fighting against the odds for 5 arduous minutes. Mr. Ruru did not survive. Both Jeremy and Max say that they are uncomfortable being called heroes because they were unable to revive him. However, as a former Long Beach fire chief told our Heroes Committee recently, heroism is not the outcome. It is in the taking action. Jeremy and Mac are to be recognized and commended for stepping up to perform CPR and use an AED on a total stranger in an amazing feat of courage and an extraordinary example of selflessness. So please join me in honoring Carlton, Mac McMiller, and Jeremy Garcia. Jeremy did note to us that he had just taken his refresher course on CPR and AED 2 months earlier. He said, quote, "The training just kicked in and everything slowed down and was under control." So again, another reminder of the importance of being trained and ready, because you never know when the time is going to come to help someone in need. John Meffert. On July 1st of 2017, John Meffert was driving down the 405 in Santa Ana, looking forward to spending a vacation with his family in Palm Springs, when suddenly a small twin-engine airplane fell from the sky, hit the median, spun out, and burst into flames right on the highway next to his car. A tall plume of black smoke rose into the air, and 4 cars were struck by parts of the plane. Many drivers pulled over, and some ran toward the flames to offer up whatever help that they could. John was the first to reach the scene. As a 17-year veteran off-duty Avalon Fire Authority, he says that his training just kicked in. A fire was still burning in the airplane, but he saw the plane's female passenger pop her head up. She was alive, and if she could be there, he figured he could be there too. Wearing just shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals, he worked with the other people on the scene to pull her out of the plane. They moved her away from the burning wreckage, and there's actually dramatic video footage showing them pulling the pilot then out of the plane as well and away from the crash. He was covered in blood as rescuers moved him to a safe spot and emergency crews arrived. The 2 people aboard the plane were taken to a hospital with traumatic injuries. Authorities called his actions heroic, although again, Meffert is reluctant to accept the title of hero. He was struck by the number of other drivers who also risked their own safety to run over and help. And he says that he just happened to be in a position so that he happened to be the first person there. Hanging the medal on John today is the pilot of that plane, Frank Pisano. John says that although he was in shock, something just hit him, and he believes that any one of us would do the same. He says that we need to live in a world. We need a world where we help others out. So please, another round of applause for John Meffert. Angel Aquino, Raylene Armour, Nick Rodriguez, Jason Gallo, and Cynthia Navarrete. On the morning of June 5th, at the Cerritos Senior Center billiards room, Mr. Donald Gardner lost consciousness and collapsed. He was barely breathing and had no pulse when another senior in the room, Mr. Angel Aquino, a retired nurse with LA County, yelled for someone to call 911 and began CPR compressions. Staff member Raylene Armour called 911 and remained on the line until the fire department arrived. Another staff member, Nick Rodriguez, grabbed the AED and ran into the room, handing it to Cynthia Navarrete, the on-site nurse. Nick then ran outside to guide in the paramedics. Staff member Jason Gallo cleared the room and began gathering information about Mr. Gardner from the files. As Angel continued compressions, Cynthia prepared the AED unit and she applied the initial shock, which resulted in an immediate positive response. The fire department soon arrived and took over the scene until the paramedics came just moments later. And Mr. Gardner survived. And in fact, he returned later that week to express his gratitude and learn exactly how it all happened. His first stop was to visit with and thank Angel for the quick, decisive action that today saved his life. Please join me in congratulating Angel Aquino, Raylene Armour, Nick Rodriguez, Jason Gallo, and Cynthia Navarrete. Nurse Cynthia had just recently received her biannual Red Cross training in CPR and AED use, and this obviously was a big team effort. And the city of Cerritos also needs to be recognized as well for having their employees go through emergency training every 2 years. If Mr. Gardner isn't proof of the importance of that preparation, then I don't know what is. So again, another big round of applause for that team. Paul and Jamie Lynn Gallegos. Even though he does not like country music, Paul Gallegos was convinced by his wife, Jamie Lynn, and their 3 grown sons to go to the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip on the night of August 1st, 2017. And we all have heard the story of what happened at that fateful show. That night, a gunman opened fire on the crowd of concert goers from the Mandalay Bay, leaving 58 people dead and 851 people injured. It was the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. When gunfire erupted, the Gallegos family and several friends became separated. Jamie Lynn remembers the horror of people falling in the street and running behind them. She, Paul, and a cousin made it into their truck with no sign of their 3 sons. As they drove their way through a sea of gates and vendor booths, a security officer pounded on the window and yelled, "She's shot, she's shot. Can we put her in the back of your truck?" The crowd helped the officer lift a woman with a gunshot wound in her face into the back of the truck. Other people fleeing the scene asked if they could jump in as well, and Jamie Lynn said, "If you can fit, get in." Paul stopped the truck 3 times, letting more people jump in to escape the bullets still raining down from above. They now had 3 people with bullet wounds, 1 in the shoulder, 1 in the foot, and 1 in the face, all riding in the back of their truck. Altogether, there were 18 people on and in the vehicle, one of whom was one of their sons. The police directed them to a triage area 2 blocks away, and they were the first to arrive, and Paul especially knew how important it was to get his badly injured victims help as quickly as possible. He and another rider assisted the wounded out of the car into the hands of the waiting paramedics. Jamie Lynn says that Paul is the calm in a storm. I don't know how he does it, but he just deals with it. She knew that, however, he was terrified. After they left the triage area, they had a flat tire and they had to stop and fix it. And thankfully, they found their missing family and friends who had found refuge in a hangar at the nearby airport. Later that evening, Paul returned to the triage area to pick up a friend's panicked children to take them back to their Vegas timeshare. 20 people ended up staying with Jamie Lynn and Paul in that 2-bedroom space that night. Many were strangers, just bonded by the horrific event and too afraid to leave. One of the people who escaped on their truck told the Gallegos family, "We were going to die, and you saved our lives." Here to hang the medal on Paul today is Diane Hill, the woman with the face wound. After being transported to the hospital from the triage area, she stopped breathing. If she had not received help so quickly, she almost certainly would have died. Hanging the medal on Jamie Lynn is Lisa McGarry, one of those who escaped from the rain of bullets on the Gallegos truck. She has come all the way from Nuevo, California in honor of their friendship, which was forged that night. So please join me in thanking them. In a familiar theme throughout all of these stories, Paul says that not for 1 minute did he think of himself. His first responsibility was to get to his family to safety, and to get the wounded to help as soon as possible. He says, "It makes me feel that there was a purpose to me being there." Please, again, join me in congratulating Paul and Jamie Lynn Gallegos for their heroism. I made it almost all the way to the end without crying, but not easy. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me again in congratulating and thanking, honoring all of the heroes that we've been talking about this afternoon. These people are your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, your family. These are people who acted and they made an indescribable difference. Get involved with the American Red Cross and you will meet extraordinary people, and in fact, you will become one of them. Again, it has been my enormous honor to share these stories with you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Laura, very much for so ably filling in for your father's role. You can tell him his job is in jeopardy now. And here we have this for you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for coming today and sharing these wonderful stories with us. This is my favorite event all year that I go to hear these stories, to hear these individuals, what they did is, I find it amazing. They're selfless acts. You contrast them with the major disasters that the Red Cross gets involved in, and here you just have one person or a group of people dealing with things, and it in some sense it can seem small, but if you imagine it from the survivor's standpoint, it's not small. It's the whole world in that moment. And those individuals stepped up and did that, and it's incredibly important. And I didn't keep count, but as you heard, many of the stories today involved Red Cross, CPR, first aid training. So I would encourage everyone to get trained and stay trained. So if the time comes when it calls on you to be the whole world to someone else, you can do it. So thank you again. And we'll say, yeah, and I want to give away the centerpieces. So if your birthday is closest to World Red Cross and Red Crescent Day, May 8th, and you are CPR trained,
That's a good one.
you get the centerpiece. So thank you very much.
Call the heroes back up for photo.
Oh, I'm sorry. And will all the heroes please join us on stage for pictures?
You might have to say that one again.
And again, will all the heroes join us on stage for pictures? Thank you.
Oh, one with council.